Greetings all, we're going to get started. I just want to thank you so much for joining me for this webinar on how to break down emotional walls and create healthy boundaries in 4 transformational steps. I'm so glad you're tuning in, and I trust that this will be just so impactful for you, and it's just my greatest joy to share this information with people. So let's go ahead and get started. I just want to share briefly with you first about what makes me credible in the area of walls and boundaries. So I've been coaching, consulting, facilitating, or mentoring on relationships for over a decade now. I'm a certified life coach of over 8 years. I have studied human behavior and cultural anthropology and counseling. I've traveled to 16 different countries, studying people in their given cultures. And these experiences have allowed me to learn a great deal about how we as humans relate to one another. I use proven methods and systems that get people lasting results. I designed the Quality Relationship Program. I have devoted many years to learning the art of healthy relationships because I know that obtaining a happy, fulfilled life, it starts with connection. I was raised in a very cultish environment that allowed me to see the intricacies of fear and control working at a systemic level. Because of the upbringing I had with all of its challenges and beautiful opportunities, I am able to know and recognize the many faces of fear. For this reason, I know firsthand what emotional walls look like because they are always born from fear. Since then, I have learned how to live out of love and empowerment, which are the opposite of fear and control. And I choose to live out of this love passionately. Tearing down emotional walls and then creating healthy boundaries is all about love and empowerment for yourself and really for others as well. So during this presentation, I will equip you to recognize unhealthy emotional walls in your life and give you the tools to disempower and break them down, to know how to create healthy boundaries and how to implement these boundaries in your relationships. Relationally speaking, a boundary is the amount of access that you allow others to have to you. And finally, I'll equip you on how to protect your priorities with boundaries in everyday life. So you may think that your emotional walls have protected you from getting hurt by a certain person or even type of person ever again. However, when you put up a wall, you isolate yourself with the bitterness of the offense. In doing so, you've been allowing this person to continue to hurt you on a regular basis for something that happened weeks, months, years, or even decades ago. It's like being in an emotional prison. You can continue on with your walls in justification of why you have them, but at the end of the day, your walls serve only one purpose: to keep you isolated in your own emotional bitterness. They have been keeping you from deeper relationships with other quality individuals, as well as a quality relationship with yourself. It's for this reason that we need to recognize the lie that has been modeled to many of us from our upbringing, that it's important to protect ourselves from getting hurt again by shutting people out and then justifying our right to do so, when no idea could be further from the truth and further from emotional and relational freedom. So we've all seen or known someone who has aged poorly over time because their walls created an isolated lifestyle for them. You know, someone who looks a decade older than they really are. And that's usually because they believed the lie that they were the victim of someone else's decisions. I don't want you to become that someone, and I don't think you want that either. And I may not know you or know your story, but I know there is hope, and I personally don't want you to suffer. I have been around and am actively still around many who suffer in ways that are inhumane and downright disgusting. I empower individuals to rise above the definition of themselves that others have for them and to redefine themselves as who they truly are, and that is as inherently worthy beings. You know, an old $100 bill crumpled up in the mud still holds the same value as a brand new crisp one from an ATM. Your inherent value can never be taken by someone who never gave it to you. I know this may sound extreme, but bear with me if some of this language is a little foreign to you. I want you to not only be able to take back your emotions, but then set up safe boundaries that will protect you from other people's dysfunctional ways. Set up boundaries that don't allow hurt people to affect you any longer. It's time to trade in isolating walls for life-giving boundaries and to become someone who lives life to the fullest, someone who is able to enjoy every moment that comes along with every part of your being. You deserve to be happy and thriving in every area of your life, especially in how you relate to yourself and to others. The time to resolve this is now. So there's nothing for sale on this webinar. I just want to get that out of the way right at the beginning here. My goal today is simply to help you identify and tear down any emotional walls you may have that have been keeping you isolated, and then to replace them with healthy boundaries you can start using immediately. I love to give, and this is the greatest way that I can give back. So as a way of saying thanks for attending this webinar, I would like to present you with a free gift at the end of this presentation, so please stick around to receive it. So I believe you are someone who has dreams and goals of becoming financially successful with an established career, goals of freedom to travel to places that most only dream of, goals to be connected with someone in such a deep way that you feel safe, valued, and truly known by them. Someone you can just be yourself around, someone you don't always have to be strong or completely put together for. And on the journey, you run into some problems. And the problems you're struggling with are you're not surrounded by people you trust, and you don't feel safe to fully be yourself. You've been hurt before, and you're not sure you want to risk that pain again. You feel like part of you is shut down and inaccessible, but you don't understand why. You fear your problems are unsolvable even for the experts. And you may be worried that the right person doesn't even exist. You'll never be emotionally ready for a healthy relationship. Getting help will be more painful than continuing to live with the walls that you've built around yourself. Or you're worried that you already had your chance at love. I believe you're here because you don't want your past to determine your future. I believe you're here because you desire more than just a successful career. I believe you're here because you are ready to experience healthy, fun, and fulfilling relationships. You're here because you know the importance of boundaries and building healthy connections. You're here because you are a confident and capable individual, but you know that sharing your life with someone intimately would take you to the next level. And finally, you're here because you never settle for anything less than the best in every area of your life. So this is for you if you are aware of the limiting emotional walls you have built to protect yourself. You desire wholeness and are willing to do the work to get there. You are ready for freedom from toxic relationships and freedom to express yourself more fully. You don't want to waste your time on another disappointment. This is for you if you dream of having both the career and the love you know you were created for. And might I add, you're tired of people telling you that you have to choose one or the other. It's for you if you recognize how limited your connections are because you don't allow yourself to open up. Your emotions are bound up and the pain of holding everything in is becoming unbearable. And this is for you if you are concerned about what your emotional walls will cost you later if you don't resolve them now. Once you implement what you learned today, you will finally be able to recognize the walls that keep you emotionally distant and isolated. You'll have more awareness and be able to create healthy boundaries in any of your relationships. You'll have more personal power than you presently have. You'll experience a greater quality of life and emotion in even the little things. You'll have more time to enjoy your highest priorities. You will live with increased levels of freedom and joy. People will respect you more and will want what you have to offer. You will become an even more confident and attractive individual than you already are. You will have newfound levels of self-respect. Once you let go of walls and create boundaries, you open yourself up to the ability to value yourself more than ever before. You're taking a stand and proclaiming, I am the most important person in my life. And that's not in any sort of arrogant way, but in an assured and attractive way. It's not in a way to boost the ego. It's in a way that communicates to others that you value yourself. This is the most attractive thing about any individual you have ever met or will ever meet. It is when we can see ourselves for who we truly are and protect that truth by implementing safe boundaries about it. Then we can begin to live fully alive with our hearts wide open. So let me just tell you briefly what this webinar will not be delivering. One and done solutions that will fix all of your emotional problems. A method to create even more space between yourself and people you don't like so you don't have to do the emotional work that comes along with creating boundaries. Emotional freedom and fulfillment if you are not willing to do the work necessary to get it. A way to use boundaries as a means of leverage over people or to manipulate others in any way, shape, or form. While boundaries are a means of keeping you safe from certain people, they are not a means to treat any person as less than a person. My desire is that you implement these strategies in your life as often as is needed. In doing so, I cannot guarantee that everyone will respond to you with open arms. When creating boundaries in especially dysfunctional relationships, it is not typically received well. Some may get offended and even angry with you when you attempt to do so. However, the reward on the other side is well worth the passing discomfort when walls are destroyed and boundaries are implemented respectfully. Finally, I cannot guarantee that though you may identify your emotional walls, you will do the work necessary to destroy them and not build more in the same or other areas of your life. So when it comes to walls and boundaries, that's me, by the way, and my wife and my little girl. When it comes to walls and boundaries, I have resolved my own pain in this area of life more times than I would care to admit. It has been through many, many tough conversations, perseverance, resilience, a heart full of love, and, of course, failure as perhaps the greatest teacher of all, that I have learned to set boundaries with others and tear down emotional walls in my own life. I still practice the art of setting boundaries on a regular basis. About 8 years ago, I made a commitment to value a relationship as much as God does. I found myself pursuing love, connection, and honor for others, and I decided to make that my highest priority in life. I decided to live my life intentionally, treating others according to their created value. And I believe the value of every individual in the world is astronomically priceless. I am now married to the woman of my dreams and have the beautiful little girl I always dreamed of having because I was willing to do the work necessary to attract them into my life. The work that I have done and continue to do on my own life allows me to thrive in any type of relationship and ultimately in life. I was able to see clearly the romantic love I desired because I had let go of bitterness and my right to be offended from past romantic relationships. Had I built walls around these past offenses, I never would have noticed and pursued the woman I now sleep next to every night. If you have ever tried to set boundaries, but then discovered you were only isolating yourself and your negative emotions, while also distancing yourself from others who truly cared about you, then let me tell you a little story. In 2005, my life took a dramatic turn when the only world I ever knew crumbled. I felt like a stranger regardless of where I was on this beautiful planet. At 21, I finally decided to leave a toxic environment that I was born into. It's where I attended preschool through 12th grade, church, and even some college. It was really in my own little subculture there. A lot of my friends and many of my family members stayed after I left. My friends that did leave relocated to get away from the turmoil and bondage we all grew up in. This left me feeling alone and lost during a time when I should have been living life to the fullest, pursuing my greatest dreams and goals. I found myself creating walls around my hurt, severely depressed, and at times not wanting to live. My world as I knew it had ended, and I felt as though my whole existence was a lie. I had moved back in with my parents, and the only friends I still had misunderstood and judged me for leaving the only community we had ever known. At this stage of my life, I had two choices. To continue living with my walls, staying depressed until I eventually gave up on life altogether, or I could shift my perspective and hold on to hope, regardless of how faint it seemed at the time, that despite being raised in such a cultish environment, I could live a successful life full of love, joy, and peace with new friends and a new sense of family. I made the decision to change my perspective from a victim of my upbringing to someone who could and should rise above my circumstances. I decided to be grateful for everything I'd learned up to that point and to open myself up to new opportunities and relationships again. I began going out and found myself meeting and connecting with new people. I quickly learned that many of my experiences had caused tremendous growth in my life, and I had so much to offer people. In a short amount of time, I found myself connecting with people in the city where I grew up but knew very little about. I went into relationships with my eyes wide open. I learned to set safe, clear boundaries that would never compromise who I was for the sake of fitting in. As I began to truly value myself and who I was becoming, I spent many years tearing down limiting walls and replacing them with healthy boundaries toward people to protect my time, space, and ultimately my essence. Once I was able to create a safe place for myself, I could better love and serve others. The walls I had used to protect me served only to keep me isolated, and they hindered me from discovering more of who I was. The boundaries I started setting released and resolved the negative energy that had been surrounding my life, while allowing me to value myself more than ever before. Since learning how to let go of emotional walls and create safe boundaries, I have been able to set healthy boundaries with dysfunctional family members, allowing me to enjoy time spent with them without having to sacrifice my peace or compromise my values. That's right, that means no more awkward holidays. Start a family where respect for boundaries and relational connection are passionately shared. Forgive those responsible for creating a toxic environment where fear and control operated at a systemic level, and help others create and set healthy boundaries who have experienced or still experience similar toxic environments. So now, let's dive into the 4 steps to break down emotional walls and create healthy boundaries. So we'll start by recognizing emotional walls that we currently have in our lives, then we'll focus on disempowering them. Next, we'll discover how to set healthy boundaries, and then we'll implement these boundaries into our everyday lives. We will start with recognizing the emotional walls in your life. And before we can do that, we need to define what we mean when we say emotional wall. An emotional wall is a barrier created around an emotion to protect one from feeling pain, and in so doing, it limits the expression and feeling of the emotion according to the size of the barrier around it. Typically, the wall is created by a wound or an offense, and the deeper the wound or offense, the larger the wall will be, limiting access to the emotion that is being protected. We need to recognize these walls in our life because they rob us from accessing our hearts and living out our truest selves by holding captive our ability to express our emotions. Honesty creates freedom. We have to be honest with ourselves in this area because if we can't admit that there are walls, we won't step into the freedom that is available. These walls won't go away on their own. They only grow and get stronger when they are reinforced with bitterness and offense. In moments when we wish to express more of a protected emotion, we often subconsciously remember the original moment of offense. We deny this emotion its full expression because we associate the pain of the offense to its expression. I'll talk a little bit more on this later. So the first step toward emotional freedom is to recognize the areas where this freedom is needed. I know this may sound a little bit basic or obvious, but without really exploring this, the hindering emotional patterns will continue to resurface. This will continue to cause you pain through unhealthy cycles and patterns. It would be like deciding to run a marathon without tying your shoes. So imagine you start with a pair of top-of-the-line shoes and find that you keep getting tripped up. By the second mile, you decide that the shoes are the problem. So you change them out for an even better pair. But you don't tie those ones either. With this new pair, you begin to really catch your stride. But every once in a while, you still get tripped up. You make it another 5 miles before you decide you need another pair. So you get a new pair and do the same thing. You don't tie your shoes first. People watching you from the sidelines notice your untied shoes. Other runners also notice your pattern of getting new shoes but overlooking the very simple, blatantly obvious step of tying your shoes. Maybe someone leans in and says, "Hey, you need to tie your shoes first or you're just going to keep tripping." You politely smile and keep going with your shoes untied, disregarding their kind attempt to help you. You keep jogging for a few more miles before deciding to change your shoes yet again. Another runner comes alongside you and lets you know that your shoes are untied. This time, you get a little irritated at their comment, and your frustration really starts to grow, especially because their shoes aren't nearly as nice as yours are. How dare they? Inwardly, you're now more determined than ever to finish this marathon, believing all the while that you'll eventually find the right shoes to finish the race with. So now, plainly speaking, without any metaphors, you can go from relationship to relationship without ever dealing with the emotional walls that keep causing conflict and separation between yourself and others. The relationship will not be a healthy one, regardless of how amazing the individual may be, if you're not willing to recognize and deal with your walls. Maybe you've recently decided you want a relationship and are looking for the right person, or are in a relationship and looking for a better one. Perhaps you're stumbling through life exhausted and frustrated from all the relationships that didn't work. You're in pain from all the bumps and bruises along the way. Or, maybe you're doing great. You're in a long-term, committed relationship that has been going quite smoothly and you're comfortable. You could even see yourself running and completing the race with this person. I know I said no more metaphors, but that one was just too good to pass up. So you're in this place and you're doing well in this relationship, but you're beginning to feel some emotional walls come up, and if they're not dealt with now, that they could cause some serious damage in your future with this person. No matter where you're at on your journey, I want to encourage you to deal with your emotional walls before looking elsewhere for a new start in another relationship. You can observe the current relationship if you're in one, check for any red flags, and see if it's still the right fit. And that's not necessarily a shoe reference. So think with me now about a time in your life when you experienced a lot of emotional pain. It could have been over the death of a loved one, a messy breakup, a divorce. It could even be something that happened to you as a child when a parent or family member yelled at you or scolded you for doing or saying something wrong. It may seem like no big deal, and looking back at these instances may seem trivial, but we shape our emotions around the meaning we give to experiences in life. So I want to give you some time here to think of a painful experience in your life. I'll give you a few moments to come up with an instance. Yeah, really just think about it right now. What's a moment in your life where there's just this really painful experience? I'll give you a few more seconds here. You got it? All right, now I'd like to ask you, in that moment of pain, what thoughts came up in your mind? Did you go back and picture a painful breakup when you made yourself a promise like, I will never love or trust again? If so, you created an emotional wall in that moment around love and trust. If you lost a loved one, did you decide in your heart that you didn't deserve to know someone so incredible anyway? If so, you created an emotional wall in that moment around your value by believing a lie that you're not valuable enough to know quality people. Did you look back as a child and feel the hurt of being yelled at by an angry adult and decide that anger equals power? This would be another instance where you created an emotional wall in your life. And this wall might keep you operating from a place of anger in an attempt to control people. Or it may be the cause of you suppressing your emotions because you're afraid of what you'll do when you're angry. This memory method is one very helpful way to recognize walls in your life. Another way to recognize walls in your life is to take anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes and make a list of the top 5 emotions you feel on a regular basis. If you feel worried, conflicted, upset, angry, and jealous most of the time, then you likely have walls around these negative emotions that are keeping them there. They have been up to protect you from pain. If you're experiencing love, joy, excitement, regret, and angst, then you'll want to explore the regret and angst to see where they're coming from and why you're experiencing them. This works because we are connecting to the subconscious meanings that we have associated to these past events, and we can now disempower them by bringing them to our conscious mind and looking at how they have served us. As I mentioned earlier, the emotional walls that we hang on to have been constructed to protect us from more pain. Our subconscious mind has determined that whatever experience caused the pain is worth avoiding at all costs. Our brains are wired for survival, and therefore they will protect us from anything that could potentially cause us harm. In figuring out when these emotional walls were created and why they were created, we can look at the stories and now consciously determine how they are serving us. We will then be able to see them for what they truly are, isolating walls, not healthy boundaries. So when I personally used the memory method to identify an emotional wall I had in my life in the area of self-value, it was like a spotlight appeared out of nowhere and shined its light all over the wall. I was undone by the amount of freedom that came just by simply identifying that this wall existed in my life. The longer I sat with it, I could see how it had been affecting so many areas of my life. I was amazed at how just by revealing the blockage, I was beginning to get set free. As you can imagine, when we grow in our understanding of self-worth, other areas of our lives are impacted as well. However, further action still needs to be taken to ensure that the walls come down and stay down. So now that we've discovered an emotional wall, it's important to disempower it so that you can be free from its isolation and live a more fulfilling and empowered life. An individual who has access to more of their emotions can more effectively deal with any problem that comes their way. If we do not disempower the wall but merely recognize it, it will still hold that emotion captive. So let's make sure we don't leave it captive any longer. Now that we know why we need to disempower the emotional walls in our life, we will discuss how to do it. Question how the wall has been serving you. This is the first step. What has it really been protecting? As I mentioned earlier, the walls that you created more times than not were done so by your subconscious mind to protect you from pain. Now, take a moment and think about how it has protected you. So again, just take a moment here and think, how has this wall been protecting me? How has it been protecting me? So likely you'll find that your wall may have actually protected you from more pain, but at what cost? Usually it's at the cost of intimacy and losing part of ourselves. At the least, it has kept you from vital experiences that would cause more growth, fulfillment, and maturity in your life. We want to question the wall in order to weaken it. We do this so that you can reclaim parts of yourself and your life that are quite literally rightfully yours. Next, we want to decide if keeping your wall or destroying it will serve you better over time. Now that you can see what this wall has been costing you emotionally and also how it has been protecting you, you need to decide whether or not it's worth keeping or worth destroying. I would like to add another tip here if you're having trouble with this decision. And hey, listen, that is totally normal. Some of us have had walls up for years, even decades, to protect ourselves from more pain. So this is my tip. I suggest making a list of everything that having this wall up has cost you. What has it cost you emotionally, physically? How has it affected your relationships? What effect has it had on your health? Has it affected your career? What about your ability to focus? How has it affected your finances? What about your stress and anxiety levels? Take some time when you do this to really think about it. After you make that list, create a list of what it will cost you if you don't take the wall down. Your ability to truly connect with others, your ability to truly connect with yourself, with God, your career, your goals, your dreams, the love relationship you one day hope to have. What will it cost you financially if you continue to leave this part of yourself locked up? Will you continue sacrificing your inner peace? Think out 5 years from now. What will it cost you in another 5 years if you don't destroy it today? How will it have affected you financially, socially, relationally? Hopefully, by this point, you see that this wall is something that absolutely has to go because you cannot afford to keep it or hang on to it any longer. Next, write out 3 detrimental thoughts that you have associated consciously or subconsciously to build and reinforce the wall. So for instance, if you have a wall up around love, let's say in the area of meeting new people, one of your reinforcing thoughts for the wall may be, what's the point? Every time I meet someone new, it's always a waste of time because we never have anything in common. Or maybe you often think something like, dating isn't worth it. I always end up betrayed and alone. Now, these may seem like innocent passing thoughts, but if allowed to remain in your mind, they will directly influence your actions and have a negative effect on your outlook in meeting new people. You're going to see what the mind is creating. And it will reinforce your wall around love, which will close you off from it a little bit more every time. Next is to thank each thought for how it has served you up until now and release it from your mind by letting it know that you no longer have any need for it whatsoever. And listen, I know thanking it may seem a little strange, but it will keep you from living in anger or regret over it, which are powerless mindsets. The final step in disempowering walls is to take symbolic action. There are numerous ways to do this, and you can be as creative as you'd like with it. I'll mention a few ways below. Place your list in a journal or a scrapbook to remember the walls you used to have in your life and the thoughts you used to think on a regular basis. You can do this so you can see the progress you've made over the next few weeks, months, and even years. It's always fun to look back and see where you were and to really celebrate your progress. You can also place your list in a time capsule and bury it or give it to a trusted confidant to hide somewhere and dig it up a few years from now. This will be the way to go if you are someone who is particularly hard on yourself, because you won't be able to obsess over your progress. And listen, I fully believe in tracking your progress. Don't get me wrong here. But for some people, it can be like the little kid who wants you to measure her every day to see if she's grown. Sometimes we need to just be patient and gracious with ourselves. I want to add here that there's plenty of room to be creative with this, so you can do your own exercise if you think of something. The only thing I suggest you not do, unless you strongly feel that's what you're supposed to do, is burn it. I say this in case you have a weaker moment and you feel like you need to be protected by your wall again. Having a whole list of reasons why it doesn't actually protect you and how it actually costs you can be quite handy, especially early on. The biggest trick to making this work is really about creating the lists. When you see on paper some of the reasons why you've created the walls and the thoughts you had that created them, you can begin to see just how obviously detrimental they are and they have been. The reason why this method works is because you're bringing to your conscious mind what has been created by your subconscious mind. You are then dismantling the beliefs by asking the right questions about them. This weakens the beliefs because you can see the pain they've been causing you. The more pain you can feel caused by them, the better it will be because they'll be easier to give up. When your mind associates a lot of pain to something, it will do anything to avoid it. So if you can associate a lot of pain to these thoughts by writing them out and questioning their validity, you will increase your ability to do away with them completely, and you'll then be able to rewrite the stories and reframe these experiences that you've had in your life. The symbolic acts are the final nail in the coffin, so to speak, because they treat these patterns of thought as a distant thing of the past. It gives your brain an extra boost of disassociation. It's like saying, oh yeah, that's right, I used to think that way or do that thing years ago. Gosh, so long gone that I almost forgot about it. Doesn't even seem like me. It's because it isn't you anymore. It's kind of like when you get together with an old friend from your childhood who mentions that crazy neighbor that you would have completely forgotten about had they not mentioned him again. It's kind of like that. That's the purpose of the time capsule, or even the scrapbook, when looked at years, months, or sometimes even as little as weeks later. So listen, this is a tool I have used and still use. I've used it with many of my clients and even some of my closest friends and family to help them let go of their emotional walls. I had one client who had a grievance with her sister for over 40 years. The very thought of her would cause her instant stress. I walked her through these steps, and she was able to identify the walls in her own life, let them go, and soon became open to the idea of having a relationship with her sister, with healthy boundaries, of course, which we'll talk about soon. The next time she saw her, she did not have any animosity toward her at all and was able to move toward her with nothing but genuine love. This is huge. We're looking at an individual who for 40 plus years could not stand being around her sister, and the feeling was mutual. She went from being stressed out at the thought of her sister to sleeping under the same roof as her without any emotional stress whatsoever. That means that despite her sister's dysfunctional ways and outright hatred towards her, this woman was able to remain completely herself, in love, not stressed out, and totally unaffected by her. That's the good stuff right there. So now that we've discussed how to recognize and disempower emotional walls, it's time to create healthy boundaries that truly protect ourselves and our recently recovered emotions. So first, I'd like to take a moment and define what a boundary is. A boundary is a line that marks the limits of an area. Relationally speaking, it is the amount of access that you allow others to have to you. And we need to establish boundaries with others, because if we don't, we'll spread ourselves thin and not have the time to do the things that make us come alive, or the heart space to invest in the relationships that matter most. We will lose sight of our goals and dreams, and if continued, we will ultimately lose sight of ourselves. So as you can see by the list on your left, there are many people that you can give yourself to, from intimate relationships to work relationships. It is up to you to determine how much access you're going to allow someone to have in your life. And don't think of access necessarily as how much time you allow someone to have with you, although that is very important, but more so of how much intimacy you allow someone to have with you, how much you allow them to know and influence you. So the list on the left is organized from the deepest levels of intimacy to the more surface levels of intimacy that you should be sharing with someone. So some of them are interchangeable dependent on your relationship with, say, some of your family members. So for instance, if your brother is your best friend, then he may be above your close friends and even in your intimate relationship space. So we'll start with your relationship and connection to God, or Source. And this is where I believe your true self to be. As the late Wayne Dyer put it, we are spiritual beings having a human experience, and it's not the other way around. So this is really where your energy, your vitality, your creativity, your passion, your drive, and your flow comes from. And there is only room for you and your creator here. So when you try to fit any person in this space, your life will be out of its natural flow, and you'll find yourself frustrated with many of the details of life. So moving from there, you have your intimate relationship. And this is reserved for your spouse, boyfriend, girlfriend, or best friend. And just like with your innermost circle, there's only room for one relationship in here. So for example, if you try to fit your children in your intimate relationship space with your significant other, you'll start running into problems very soon. Moving down the list from here, each of the following categories has room for more than just one relationship. So next might come your children, if you have any, followed by a few close friends, and so on until we get to your outermost circle, where there really isn't any room left for people like abusers or terrorists. So these boundaries are based off of an individual's ability to have intimacy with only so many people. We are wired and made for relationships and connection. In fact, in the longest running case study on adult development, Harvard University discovered that what kept certain people alive longer, healthier, and happier, as opposed to others in the study, came down to one determining factor. Robert Waldinger, the current director of the continuing 75-year study, came to the conclusion that good relationships keep us happier and healthier. So, when it comes to longevity and happiness and overall health, perhaps nothing is more important than setting clear boundaries. You guys ever seen the movie Yes Man with Jim Carrey? That is not Jim Carrey, by the way. The premise for the movie is that Jim goes to a seminar and takes an oath that he has to say yes to literally everything that comes his way. As soon as he leaves the seminar, he is approached by a man without a home who asks him for a ride. Jim reluctantly agrees. The man then asks Jim if he can borrow his phone to make a phone call on this 40-minute or so long drive to a park in the middle of nowhere. Jim hesitantly says yes again. The man ends up draining the battery on Jim's phone until it is completely dead. Upon arrival at the park, the man then asks Jim for, I think it's like $10 or something like that. And when Jim takes out his wallet and the man sees how much money he has in there, he sheepishly asks Jim for the rest of it. And what does Jim say in frustration and ever so begrudgingly? Yes. The man gets out of the car holding his wad of cash, and with a bewildered look on his face, says to Jim, "God bless you, man." The man then dives into a bush, and when Jim goes to start his car after dropping the man off, he discovers that he is now out of gas in the middle of nowhere with no way to call AAA for assistance. So how many times have you found yourself in a similar situation? All right, maybe not as extreme as Jim's case, but how about in helping out a drama-craving family member or friend who you always say yes to? Not knowing your value will allow others to take advantage of you until you are completely drained and left with an empty tank. Knowing your value, however, will allow you to say no to people and to things that are not in your best interest. Once you know your value, and let me just say that even though I might have never met you, I fully believe that you are incredibly valuable and worthy of unconditional love in every area of your life. Again, you need to know that this is true for yourself before you can expect it from anyone else. But once you know it, you can start to set boundaries that protect your value from those who don't. And effectively what happens is you're able to create these boundaries. You're actually become more resourceful. You're able to give more of yourself in ways that are actually going to be more impactful for the lives of those around you and extend your reach even further. It can really help you actually impact the lives of others a lot better, a lot more effectively when you're able to create these boundaries. So next is to create a list of your values, dreams, and goals so you know the types of people you're looking to connect with, and so you know who to create boundaries with, those who don't align with your priorities and ambitions. As you meet people, you can then decide where they should fit into your circles. You can then set boundaries by gauging not only how much an individual values you, but also by how he or she respects and honors you. The more honor and mutual respect you can share with another person, the more you're able to trust them with more intimate parts of yourself. As you grow in relationship with them, there should be a mutual level of intimacy that's being shared, which leads right to the next step. Now, I want to discuss this with you, and it's not discussed enough, and it's something that I believe to be essential to relationships, and that is transactional give and take as opposed to transformational give and take. Transactional relationships ask, if I give you this, what will I get in return? And are therefore always thinking of themselves, regardless of how good their intentions or motives may seem. Transformational relationships ask questions like, how can I add value to this relationship? Or how can we solve this problem together out of unconditional love and gain for the other? Transformational give and take is knowing your value, being secure in yourself, and loving yourself so unconditionally that you're never looking to get anything from others. What is then shared from this type of relationship is value, honor, respect, and growth, as neither person involved is in this relationship, is in it out of any sort of agenda. As I stated earlier, transactional give and take asks, what do I get in return? And we've all felt this before, right? Imagine buying a car or a time when someone approached you to sell you something. Maybe you remember the too frequent occurrences of being hit on by someone who clearly has an agenda that is not loving you the way you desire, nor is that agenda knowing you the way you desire to be known. You know quickly what this looks like and feels like. If you're in a relationship where there's an expectation for you to do certain things because certain things are being done for you, then this is a transactional relationship. It's based upon what you can give, likely upon what they can give, and how the mutual giving can serve each other's needs. Now, if there's an expectation of you to be you, which involves you doing certain things, and you are loved regardless of whether or not certain things are done, this is a transformational relationship. Your identity in the relationship is not about what you can do for the other person. It's about who you are, and if what you're doing is not lining up with who you are, the other can come to you out of love for you to help you get back on track, and vice versa. You can do this with them too. They're not coming to punish you or prove to you that your behavior is wrong. They're coming to remind you of who you are. When fear is taken out of the equation, the relationship can flourish as it was intended to. I want to add as well that sometimes our relationships can fluctuate from transformational to transactional. This happens when we lose sight of ourselves for any variety of reasons. We can get back on track once recognizing this by loving ourselves first, recognizing and owning who we are, and then giving instead of taking to the relationship. You want to start forming relationships that are transformational give and take, where the giving and taking is more like being and enjoying. I know this may sound very different or overly simplistic to many listening, but when you approach a relationship not looking to see what you can get, this is how a lot of victims think, but rather how can who I am add value to this person or people? The return that you then receive is enjoyable. It's enjoyable because you are giving of yourself freely. It's egoless. It's not about what you deserve or your rights. It's about operating in your truest sense of being created in and from love and preferring your fellow woman or man. Transformational give and take, simply stated, is love out, love in, or life out, life in. If most or even all of your relationships are presently transactional give and take relationships, then you can turn this around by getting in touch with the loving individual that you are. Tap into that abundant, never-ending source of your true you-ness, which is founded in unconditional love, and know that you are complete. Then you can simply ask yourself this question: how can I add value to this relationship? Knowing that you don't need anything in return. Does this sound too good to be true, or a little bit like a foreign language? Listen, I get it. This isn't taught every day, nor is it a common practice in most of our societies. I will tell you, though, that this is what it takes to live a truly fulfilled life, regardless of whether you're living on the streets or in the finest mansion in Hollywood with the best views, surrounded by people who adore you, with all the fame and millions of dollars. You, once rooted and grounded in unconditional love, will flourish in your relationships and attract quality people into your life who will add value to your life without you looking to get anything from them at all. When you give of yourself from your unlimited source of unconditional love, you will get more than you could have ever asked for, hoped, or imagined. So the last thing you'll want to do is communicate your boundary. This can be difficult for many of us who like to avoid conflict. I am someone who has done a lot of work on setting boundaries amidst conflict in my own life. And as someone who used to run from conflict like an angry swarm of bees, honestly, no joke, please believe me when I say it can be done. All right, maybe I didn't actually run away from conflict like an angry swarm of bees, but you get the idea. The first thing to do when setting a boundary with someone is to have a clear goal and intention of what it is that you want conveyed to them. Do not be ambiguous in communicating to someone that you need space for yourself, to reassess or work on your priorities, to reconsider how you're spending your time or who you're spending your time with. Most people will respect you for doing so and doing so clearly. And if they don't, that may be a good indicator that it's time for you to move on to more empowering relationships where people don't feel threatened by you making better decisions for yourself. Give yourself the permission you need to cut ties and know that you can do so lovingly. The second thing to remember is that you are not in control of anyone or how they will respond to you, nor do you need to be. You are simply communicating what it is that you are going to be doing, regardless of how they respond to you. Boundaries send a powerful message that you are in control of you and that you will determine what people, things, and priorities will consume your time. Lastly, remember your value and respect for yourself as you communicate. This will make it easier to stay firm and keep the point of the conversation on you creating the boundary. Remember, setting a boundary is never about someone else's behavior. It's about your value. I'd like to leave room here for the question of, what do we do if we already have people in our inner circles of intimacy that we know don't belong in that space? And that's a great question. When we have people like this in our intimate circles, it sends the message to others that they too can come and take from us because we won't say no. It's like holding up a sign that says, "I'm powerless, take what you need." What we have to do with these individuals who have taken up residence in our space is communicate to them clearly that as much as we love and appreciate them, we're going to take some time and space for ourselves to assess our values, our goals, and the relationships that are going to be life-giving and that we can that will be more transformational. We need to determine what relationships and priorities in our lives deserve most of our attention. You can say this in your own way and explain as little or as much as you want. I suggest doing this after you've made your priority list, but don't wait until you have it all figured out. Discovering your value is a worthwhile and ongoing and often joyful process. So following these boundary setting steps will work for you because each step is designed to build off the previous one. This creates momentum for the process, which is great when achieving something new. Each step also builds leverage for why you not only should do it, but must do it if you want to have the kind of relationships that you know will give you the freedom you desire. Creating momentum and using leverage in these steps makes the process not only achievable, but also more enjoyable. Catherine was one of my first clients, and she had difficulty putting her priorities first. She had many obligations and commitments to family and work that were consuming most of her time. When we first started our coaching sessions together, it was plain to see that, Catherine was living much of her life on other people's terms, and her own desires were paying the price. We were able to sort out first what Catherine's goals and dreams were above the ones that well-meaning family and friends had for her life. Can you attest to that? Then she was able to set clear boundaries with her family and work relationships. She communicated to them that despite their good intentions for her life, she would be making more time to do what she loved to do, which was tap dance. She set a clear, healthy boundary. She started off by telling her boss that she would need more time off to practice dance. Over the course of the next couple months, Catherine's life led her deeper into her desires of Irish tap dancing. She took a job as an Irish tap dancer, getting paid to do what she loved, where she would soon find a romantic relationship with the accordion player who she met at one of her performances. She was able to follow her heart because she set clear boundaries with loving, well-intentioned family members who had other plans for her life. I'm happy to report that she is now happily married to that accordion player, dancing and moving forward with others with the other desires of her heart. We did the hard work of tearing down our walls. We set up clear boundaries, and now we must walk them out. If you implement your boundaries, you'll ensure that your time is yours, your resources stay right where you want them, and your life remains lived on your terms. If we don't implement and walk out the new boundaries we have set, then we will end up frustrated and upset that life is not how we want it to be. We'll find our time is stretched and our resources will seem limited, and we will slowly begin to lose touch with ourselves again. So the first step is to take 15 minutes for yourself every morning. This is a tried and true practice that many successful individuals have used to change and keep their lives changed. And when I say successful, I really just mean fulfilled. Treat your boundaries with even more importance than a family, work, or school commitment. I know it sounds extreme, but this will ensure that you live from your core beliefs, your values, and commitments. It will keep your why, your passion present with you while you go about your day. I know we've already discussed the importance of communicating our boundaries with others, but it bears worth repeating. People are going to come in and out of your life on a daily basis who will want more of your time than you can afford to give. So it is important to be firm with people. So walking out your boundaries begins every morning right when you wake up. It's important to have at least 15 minutes to yourself first thing, to get in touch with yourself and to figure out what your objectives are for the day before taking on other responsibilities like work or family requests. Giving yourself this time in the morning allows you to live from your heart more easily throughout the day, as opposed to living out of reaction toward the demands of others and circumstances. If you need to rise just 15 minutes earlier than normal, it will be time well spent because it will keep you living out of your flow of being. Let me just reemphasize the importance of doing this before all the cares and worries of the day are thrown at you via a significant other's agenda, social media feeds, and all those other things. So now that you have priorities set for the day, it's important that you treat them with an even greater level of importance than you would a family, work, or school commitment. Yes, your boundaries are that important. If you allow even a spouse's needs to come before your own, you will eventually find yourself feeling drained and even resentful toward them. Remember, value, value, value. Once you decide to value your top priorities above all else, they will be accomplished quicker and with more efficiency than things that are simply not as important. Top priorities like going to your yoga class, taking time for yourself in the morning, or going on a retreat to recharge so you can more effectively connect with someone who will value and treasure you. This is another reason why creating boundaries is so important in every area of your life. When you're firm on your boundaries, people get the message. The more firm and protective you are of your priorities and relationships, the more time you'll have for the individuals and things that add value to your life. Important to note, being firm with people adds more value to your intimate relationships because those closest to you will know that you said no to other people so you could say yes to being with them. On the contrary, if you don't set clear boundaries with people in your outer circles, then those in your closer circles will suffer because they'll be receiving the message that they're more of an obligation really than a valued friendship or relationship. This sad truth can be true of your relationship with your children, your significant other, or your best friend. I have seen this scenario play out way too many times in coaching individuals who grew up in the church or in families where the parents were workaholics. Ministry, a work emergency, call, or meeting often took one or both of the parents away from the home, teaching their children that, well, daddy or mommy love you very much. They value helping others in need or working all the time above the needs of their own children. What message do you think stuck? That they were loved very much with words, or that their parents did a poor job showing them that they were loved with actions? You being firm with your boundaries will show and communicate value to those in your closest relationships. I have a friend who works in Seattle. He's responsible for training new team members as well as equipping doctors and surgeons with new medical technology. On top of these requirements, he travels often, teaching the same tools to team members, doctors, and surgeons in other regions of the country. As you can imagine, his job takes up a lot of his time. He is also happily married with 4 precious daughters, and his family means the world to him. Because he is such an amazing individual and knows his value, he is well sought after. On a regular basis, he has to let people know that he is not currently in the market for new friends when work colleagues and other professionals want to connect with him and his family. He communicates clearly, honestly, and genuinely, and people are seldom offended by his words. He has learned that if he is not firm with people, then he will end up spending time in relationships that will take him away from his high priorities, his wife, daughters, and dreams. As amazing as he is in the medical profession, his family would tell you that he's an even more exceptional husband and father. This practice gets easier the more you do it. So if you're someone who doesn't like to or even hates offending people, don't worry. People will learn to respect you for valuing yourself and your time, and those who don't likely shouldn't be in your life anyway. And it'll get a lot easier the more you do it. And again, it's important to remember, this isn't about you being a mean person and establishing your boundaries. This is about you creating space for yourself and your priorities so that you can more effectively love the people closest to you and then expand your influence from there. So as much as I'd like to use a different example for how not to walk out boundaries, none stands out more than my own. Using boundaries was an area of my life that needed a lot of improvement. I love helping others and found that I often exhausted and neglected myself, seemingly only for the reward of being called a nice guy. Anytime someone had a need that I could help with and I wasn't doing something that I considered urgent, I would stop what I was doing to help them. I didn't value my time or my priorities enough to say no to someone else. As a result, I would feel disconnected and frustrated and tired. And listen, helping people is great, and I highly recommend doing it. As I was just saying, your life will be richer through generosity if you implement the boundaries that protect your core beliefs, your time, and your essence, what makes you, you. So my guess is that you've flown before, and if not, please enjoy this free lesson on what to do in case of emergency while flying. Before takeoff, a flight attendant will always demonstrate what to do in case of emergency. When they mention the oxygen mask dropping from above, they always tell you to put the mask on yourself first before assisting others. It is the very same principle when it comes to personal priorities. We must take time daily to care for ourselves and get in touch with our passions, purpose, and needs, and choose to protect them before attempting to assist others. I would not be a successful coach today if I had not stopped putting the needs and kind-hearted intentions of others above my own. I would set goals, I would tear down my emotional walls, I would set healthy boundaries, but would fail to keep them on a daily basis. Many of my intimate relationships suffered because of it. I was following successful tips and doing the right things to live a truly happy life, except for keeping the boundaries I needed in my day-to-day affairs. I have paid the price too many times for not valuing my own desires, dreams, and needs above all else. It has come through many heartaches, unnecessary suffering, and many days feeling disconnected from myself that I finally learned to walk out my boundaries. I now have a strong morning routine to stay connected to myself and connected to the divine reminder of my inherent worthiness, as Brené Brown so beautifully puts it. I place my priorities at the top of the list because I've learned that if I don't, everyone closest to me, including myself, suffers. I won't be able to have the kind of impact that I want to have in this day or even in this life, because this momentum just tends to carry on. And as I was saying, like, everyone closest to me, including myself, suffers because they get an unpassionate, discontented husband, father, coach, or friend. I am firm on my boundaries, and most people thank me for it because they know they're getting all of me when I'm with them. They're getting a present man, someone who's inspiring, someone who's passionate, someone who's full of life, not someone who half-heartedly listens or wishes that he was someplace else. Don't wait until tomorrow to start walking out your boundaries. I hope you can see by this point that you can't afford to. Your heart, your very essence, is at stake. So now let's do a quick review. So first we discussed the all-important first step, which is to recognize your emotional walls, then disempower them, set boundaries, then lastly, walk out these boundaries that you have in your life. You can recognize emotional boundaries two different ways anytime you need to. So the first way is through exploring painful memories, and the second is to simply list out the 5 emotions that you feel on a regular basis. Both exercises are designed to help you recognize where the wall came from, so you can then move forward in the process, which is to disempower emotional walls. So this is where we investigate how the wall has served you in both good and bad ways and decide whether or not you want to keep or destroy the emotional walls. We then come up with 3 different disempowering thoughts or beliefs that reinforce your wall, followed by thanking and releasing those thoughts for how they have served you in good and bad ways. Then we have the symbolic actions to take to really give the disempowering thought the final heave. So once the walls are down and now considered to be not only a complete joke, but incredibly detrimental to your well-being, we can then begin to set boundaries. So first, we get in touch with our value by taking time to connect and cultivate our innermost relationship with God, to connect with our inherent value and ourselves. Then we can create a list of our values, dreams, and goals so we know what boundaries we need to protect. Following this, and again, remember in that priority list, there are those relationships and the influence that you want to have beyond just your inner circles. So following this, we can start connecting and placing people into our lives by how much intimacy we want to share with them based upon our ability to recognize and share in mutual respect and honor for one another. From these first 2 steps, we now know what we have to offer and also what is being offered in a relationship. Next in setting boundaries is communicating our boundaries as needed. We talked about how some people are in a space that they should not be occupying and how to get them out. And we discussed how to communicate to others our priorities, goals, and objectives. So that brings us to the final step, which is walking out your boundaries. First is 15 minutes to yourself in the morning for you to connect to God and to yourself. Next is to treat your boundaries with more importance than any other commitment in your life, because they really have to be treated this way in order to properly value who you are and what you have to give, and then be able to properly value others. Finally is being firm with people on a daily basis as needed, so you are not left feeling exhausted with no energy for the things that really make you tick, make you come alive, and the things that really make you you. So I have just shown you the system myself and others use to recognize and disempower emotional walls, as well as create and walk out healthy boundaries on a daily basis. You have listened to how it works, how people have succeeded at using it, and you know what I'm saying can help you. I believe you are probably an influential person who is already helping others, and you might be asking how you can implement these tactics and help others to do the same. Disempowering walls and creating healthy boundaries works and is so necessary. If you would like me to personally help you implement everything we have gone over today, it would be my greatest joy to do so. So here's how we will do that. So in the beginning of the presentation, I mentioned that I have a gift for you, and now I want to tell you more about that. I have set aside some time to talk to you over the phone about how you can apply these ideas to your own life starting today. And this call is completely free of charge. Again, this is my service. This is what I want to do for you to really help you take your life to the next level and your relationships become transformational. So on this call, you'll discover your emotional walls, the ways to disempower them, and the personal power to build and sustain boundaries. We will create an action plan to tear down your emotional walls, as well as create healthy boundaries. You will use all of this to create more freedom in your relationships and ultimately more freedom in your life. So if we see the value of working together, we can discuss what that will look like. And I might even invite you to become a client. And if we do decide to work together, we will begin to work together immediately so that we can help you. And if we don't decide to work together, hey, that's totally fine too. But I do have some requirements for this call. This is not for everyone. You must be able to be honest with yourself and me about areas of your life that are not where you want them to be. This is for you if you are tired and fed up with being emotionally disconnected from yourself and or others. You must be someone who has a high respect for emotional stability and growth. You must be willing to do the work necessary to receive lasting change. You must be open to the idea, or dedicated to your own personal growth, and have the desire to treat it with the same level of importance, if not an even greater level, as your most pressing commitments. You must be in a place where you know that things simply are not good enough for you relationally, and you will not accept subpar in this area of your life any longer. So again, I'm offering these calls because I want to be of service first and foremost. I also want you to implement what I've just showed you today without struggle, so you don't have to waste any more time or energy. And I want you to get results right away. There's no reason why you should continue suffering with an emotional wall that isolates you, and you can live free and able to give and receive as you choose. So here's what to do next. You can simply click on the link below, and that will direct you to a landing page where you can book a call and book an appointment with me. And listen, spaces are very limited because I personally field these calls myself. It's my joy to do that, and I love doing it. And I don't want you to miss out, and I only have a few spaces, so please act fast. So it has been my greatest honor to be able to serve you today. I believe that you are a courageous individual who has what it takes to tear down destructive emotional walls and set healthy boundaries. Again, just click the link there and have a fantastic day. Live the love you were created from. It's my greatest joy to be able to share with you today. God bless. I look forward to talking with you soon.